This is the Moondrop Pudding. No, wait, actually, this is the wrong pudding. Sorry. This is the Moondrop Pudding. Finally, we have escaped the days of endless Nekocake units being renamed and refreshed into something else. The pudding is a completely new True Wireless design that is sure to power the next, I don't know, 10 to 20 refreshes that Moondrop will eventually make. And the pudding though, it's so far their most refined offering. But are these improvements enough to compete in the modern chifi market? I guess we'll see in this video. If you like the show, help the channel grow with a like and a sub. You're watching Lumerion, now let's get into it. So the pudding's box is simple but quite charming. You've got a clear plastic window showing off the pudding, along with some specifications all along the box itself. Open that up and you get the pudding on top. Below that sits the accessory box that holds 3 sizes of these ear tips that feel like liquid silicone, but somehow they look quite cloudy. There's also a basic charging cable and some comically tiny instruction manuals. This looks like a little cheat sheet that you would sneak into a test room, not some kind of documentation. But not only that, Moondrop also gives you a little stamp-like photo of Chibi Mitsuki Yuki. This is hella cute and I think it stays very true to Moondrop's weeb origins. Going to the pudding, I mean, it really does look like a pudding cup, right? With the clear top showing the earpieces inside. The case is pretty compact, it's roughly the size of my Rose Ceramics X. And there's a charging LED on the front with a manual connect button and charge port in the back. Now, I'm not sure what this little dimple on the lid is for, but I mean, it's there. Overall though, I do like this, I guess yellow color scheme. It either looks like a pudding or, I don't know, kind of reminds me of a duck, depending on who you ask, I guess. Now going to these earpieces, I'm really glad to see that they've ditched the old stem design, which is very bulky and it's easy to fall off, and it also did not seal that well. But pudding now uses a more standard kind of shape. It's much smaller and the case supports full-sized ear tips. So no need to fuss and buy some special low-profile ear tips for the pudding. Still though, I would recommend swapping out to Tangent TAPB base tips for better overall comfort, or if you want something shorter, I've had a good time with the Final Fusion G ear tips as well. The wider front surface here, it also helps to improve the touch accuracy. With the old Nekocake style Moondrop True Wire stuff, it registers my touches like half of the time. With the pudding, it's now more like 80% of the time. Still not perfect, but an improvement nonetheless. However, the build quality, it remains less than ideal. You can clearly see where the plastic pieces join together, and the nozzles have these nasty bits of leftover plastic. Ugh. I guess the factory worker lost his pair of God hand nippers on that day. If you're in the Gundam community, you'll know what that is. So this factory employee, I guess they just skipped the step of cutting out the extra bits of plastic on here. It's 2026 now, and the lack of an IP rating on a True Wire set like this is quite disappointing. They have to address this soon in future releases, seriously. But yeah, the earpieces themselves, they are quite solid from a comfort standpoint. They can fit pretty snugly in my ears, although it's mostly held on by the ear tip. But I've worn these puddings for like 5 to 6 hours on a day trip with no real discomfort. So the pudding doesn't support your typical high-end codecs like LDAC or aptX, but it does have the newer LDHC standard. Now, I don't have any devices that support this codec, so it's just gonna be good old AAC for me. But otherwise, the pudding gives you most of the features that you would expect from a modern True Wire set. There's a lighter intensity wind noise cancellation mode, but the active ANC is so far the best I have seen from a Moondrop wireless product. This is roughly the same ANC performance as the more expensive Robin. It was good enough to block out a storm that I went through on a recent weekend trip, and it did help me get some sleep, so kudos to Pudding for that. The transparency effect is also pretty good. I'd say it's still a bit subtle, but there's enough of the outside world being piped in for a semi-convincing effect, and you can also hear yourself talk a little bit. The parametric EQ suite from the Moondrop Link app is now much improved. Heck, I would even say that it is the best looking and most intuitive parametric EQ I've seen so far, including the excellent Tangium app. Seriously, you have a 10-band parametric EQ for the Pudding with a little graph showing your sound changes live, and the changes they apply consistently now. Just remember to press apply and then press confirm as well. However, the parametric EQ limits are a bit weird. You have a minus 12 decibel range, however there's only 3 decibels of positive gain to work with, which means you'll have to do a lot of reductive EQ rather than an additive EQ. The additive EQ, it's a little bit easier for novices to work with. But anyways, by far, the best feature is the auto EQ integration. You press the target button to load up this list, and there's going to be options for many of Moondrop's other IEMs and all of the typical sound targets that you would like. Then you press auto EQ, wait a few seconds, and you can see the changes reflect right on the graph. Moondrop's EQ integration has gone a very long way indeed. Now you can also try to emulate other Moondrop IEMs and even headphones with its auto EQ, but honestly it's not really the same as listening to the real deal, which is to be expected, but you know, at least the feature's there for you to play with. But that's where the praise for this companion app stops and where the cracks start to appear. Despite them already having a PEQ section, for some reason there's still a Tune EQ tab that has only the one reference option. Like they should have just removed this if there's nothing else in there. If you switch between ANC and transparency too fast, the app kind of chokes and tells you to slow down, it's not keeping up. There's also something called STI personal sound preferences. Oh boy, that is some unfortunate naming. Moondrop wants to give me an STI. What is this? Well, whatever it is, it requires a Moondrop account, which for some reason needs me to verify with my phone number. What? The thing is, it would not accept my phone number. I don't know why. Your guess is as good as mine, really. Here's something especially frustrating. The app reports that there's a firmware update, adding a lot of cool stuff like Mitsuki Yuki voice prompts, many bug fixes, and further customization options. Now that all sounds well and good, yeah? But for some reason, there's no button to update. They're just teasing me with this new firmware, but not letting me do anything at all. So yeah, that's just lovely. Anyways, about those voice prompts, my pudding ships with pretty standard interaction sounds rather than any voice notifications. So you have this really weird touch noise that sounds like it's driver flex, and it genuinely had me scared that my pudding, like it already has some build issues or something. But no, it was just the system noise. Oh, and here's some of the system sounds as well, if you're interested in that. So here's a sound test of the microphone from the Moondrop Pudding. It's alright, I guess. Good enough for calls. Pretty basic, but it'll get the job done. Now, it's been years since Moondrop made their first true wireless product, and although they've made some great strides, somehow the Moondrop Link app continues to be full of bugs and glitches. Like, granted, most of these issues don't massively affect day-to-day use, but it just signals a lack of care and development, where other brands like Tangijim, they now have a more mature and refined app experience. I just don't know why Moondrop still can't quite get it right. But perhaps the most redeeming quality of the Moondrop Pudding is gonna be its sound. Out of the box, it ships with a very balanced tuning that reminds me of the Tangijim Bunny, with a little bit less warmth and slightly more bass, making for a very pleasing listening experience that works well with vocal performances. Now, you're not gonna get Rumble Town bass on the pudding, but it is a definite improvement over the previous Nekocake based designs. But it's still pretty conservative at the end of the day. Although you can see good sub-bass extension, it's just about enough to be present. It works well enough for more chill electronic tracks like Love Roulette by I give up on this artist name. You can say it for yourself. The mid-range is really nice though. You have a slightly warmed lower mid-range that is equal parts pleasing and resolving, whilst the upper mids, they continue to show Moondrop's tuning expertise. Vocals on Spice by Tokyo Karan Koron sound lovely on the pudding, giving the singer just the right amount of sharpness and a slight breathiness. It's not quite like female vocal poison level, but it's certainly emotive and romanticizing the vocal performance rather than sticking to this like purely neutral kind of tone. But lower treble range is mostly rolled off to give a more non-fatiguing presentation, though I would prefer a bit more spiciness here. Still though, it's very fixable thanks to the parametric cue, which leads us to this particular preset that I really like. Now, I've been testing around with all of the different PEQ presets available in the Moondrop Link app, both the official ones and the user-made presets. And they're all pretty good actually, because they kind of build off of the stock sound of the pudding, which is already a solid foundation. But so far though, I'm really impressed with this one called Project D.T.A.S or D.T.A.S, I don't know. It keeps a roughly similar bass profile, flattens out the lower mids, and pushes the pina gain up to the bridge between upper mids and the lower treble. It looks like it shouldn't work, but somehow it does. The shift of the pina gain peak from about 3 kHz to 5 and 6 kHz, it reduces the body of female vocalists, but then it ends up making male vocals sound a bit more sharp, but without the weird tonality that you get with like a very upper mid emphasized tuning, with the treble region seeing a welcomed boost as well, whilst keeping some of the warmth that was in the default tuning of the pudding. This D.T.A.S preset makes the pudding sound a bit more atmospheric, I'd say, and it kind of cheats the soundstage feel a bit too. So if you want a more wide soundstage feel, even if it's like sort of like just playing with the tuning to get it that far, this will work, you know? And this kind of sound reminds me of more flagship tunings like the Mistacraft Myth. It's not the same, of course, but it gives me a similar vibe. So the soundstage on the pudding is pretty standard, it's just about average, and changes ever so slightly if you decide to go with some shorter ear tips. The soundstage height is pretty meh. I mean, it makes for just basic imaging abilities. Regarding technicalities, now the pudding is definitely an upgrade over the older Space Travel 2 models, matching the resolution and separation of the Moondrop Golden Age series of true art stuff. Macro details can also be clearly heard, definitely aided by the clean and balanced tuning. Though I guess you can still hear some smoothing that's being done to the micro details, at least on the AAC and SBC codecs. Maybe the LADHC option is gonna be better at this, I don't know. The technical ceiling for this pudding is, I think, a little bit below the Robin, but it can be had for a lot less money. So you generally get what you pay for, with a sweet parametric EQ suite to go with it. So I've said a lot about the Moondrop Pudding, but there's still a bit more to say. I actually got my friend Naka to send me a care package full of his true wireless earphones. So if you want to see the Moondrop Pudding compared to like the Moondrop Robin, one of the older Nekocake models, as well as something from Tangium, stay tuned because I'm gonna make a separate piece covering the Moondrop Pudding compared to all of those other true wireless sets. Expected to arrive sometime next week. Stay tuned. After many revisions and refreshes of their Nekocake design, Moondrop has finally introduced a completely redesigned true wireless set in the Moondrop Pudding, with much improved ergonomics, better ANC and transparency performance, as well as a surprisingly decent PEQ experience. However, I mean, even after half a decade of making true wireless products, somehow Moondrop still needs work on improving their fit and finish, especially on the pudding, and the Moondrop Link app still has some frustrating, albeit non-critical bugs that just need to be squashed. The pudding is Moondrop's best attempt yet at a fully featured and good sounding true wireless earphone, but we should also consider that it now has to compete with many other brands which have also picked up on some tuning tricks alongside more premium build and better software. Nevertheless, it is certainly reasonably priced enough to warrant a purchase, especially on sale. Thank you to Shenzhen Audio for providing a sample of the Moondrop Pudding for review. However, they do not have any creative or editorial control over my content, and all that I've shared in this video are my honest thoughts. Join my Patreon for extra product photography and thumbnails of these videos, and get my image presets, which aim to give the stale photos of modern digital cameras some vintage vibes and a bit more personality. I am also releasing a new preset that helps complement and really bring out the characters of your old digicam. So if you have an old digital camera, you want a nice preset, a punchy one, go to my Patreon, grab it, and tell me about your results. Join the channel members to get early access to videos just like these, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.